Hi friends, it's Brianna and welcome back to Brianna's Bookshelf. So it is almost June, so you know what that means. It is time for my May reading wrap up. I read a lot of really good books this month. I read 8 books overall and 4 of those were 5 stars. So half of all the books I've read in May became 5 stars, which is crazy. Like, what a good reading month. We're gonna go from lowest to highest rating, so stick around if you want to hear what books I gave 5 stars. Starting off with my lowest rated book, Paleontologist by Dumas, and I gave this book 2 stars. So this is like paleontology horror. So it's a horror book with a lot of dinosaur lore happening. Basically, our main character, he works at a museum and he's a paleontologist, so he's like curating the exhibits, preparing new fossils to be exhibited, and he has like a past connection with this museum that he just started working at because he used to live in this town, like it's his hometown, and when he was a kid his baby sister actually went missing in this museum, and people thought that perhaps she was kidnapped, but nothing ever came of it. There was no suspect, she was never found. So there's kind of that like looming over his head when he starts taking this job. So he's already like a little bit weirded out by it, kind of hoping to see if anyone who works there might know anything about this. And then he also hears that the former paleontologist at the museum went crazy, and then he starts to hear strange noises whenever he's working in the late evening or at night. So there's a lot going on with this book. We've got like the missing person aspect. We have kind of like a night at the museum kind of thing going on. And the reason I didn't like it is because I actually just felt like there was too much going on. It was a really good idea and very unique. That's what I think. It's a very unique take on a dinosaur story. Like, it managed to do it without just being like Jurassic Park, you know? Because I feel like there's not that many other dinosaur books, at least that I'm aware of. So it's definitely different than that. But I didn't love how many different plot points took place with the missing sister aspect. There was like some paranormal sort of stuff going on that I wasn't really a fan of. Yeah, I think just like the combination of everything just kind of lost me and didn't quite work for me. So unfortunately, this had to be a 2 star. Then my next lowest rating was a 3.5 star. So a big step up from 2 star. And that was Blood and Steel by Helen Scheurer. And this is the first book in the Legends of Thesmar series, which is, I believe, a 4-book fantasy romance series. And I really enjoyed the book, but I wasn't like super obsessed with it. I think I'm probably going to continue the series because I definitely see potential in it, but I felt like the first book was just a little bit lacking for me personally. So in that book, we're following Thea, who her dream is to become a warrior. She wants to be like the highest rank of warrior in her kingdom, which is to be one of the Legends of Thesmar. However, due to a prophecy that happened in previous years, no women are allowed to even hold weapons or be within the kingdom's military at all. And so that's obviously a significant barrier. So she sets out to try to convince her local rulers that she should be an exception and that she should be able to train to be a warrior, because she's already been training in secret like basically her whole life. So she does end up training to become a warrior. There's like a kind of romance going on with someone who's like higher ranking in their army, and I really liked that it feels very classic fantasy. It felt very like nostalgic. The settings were very familiar, of having like this small village within this greater kingdom, and then having, you know, there's a local king and there's forests and all that. Just felt very familiar, you know, and it was enjoyable. It was done well. I just like didn't feel super gripped by the story, unfortunately. I didn't feel like I got to know, like I felt that excited about Thea as a main character. And I also wasn't a big fan of the love interest. There's nothing wrong with him. Like, I feel like I should have liked him. Like, he had a lot of qualities I usually like in book boyfriends, but for whatever reason, them together just didn't really get me excited or inspired. So yeah, 3.5 stars. Then at 3 3/4 of a star, so 3.75, we have City of Ruin by Charissa Weeks. This is the next book in the Witchwalker series, and I won't talk too much about what happened in this one since it is a sequel, but in the first book, we are following Raina, who lives in this village where many of the people living there are witches, and every year there is a certain time where someone from the kingdom is sent. He's called the Witch Collector, and he comes to all the local villages to collect a witch from each village that will then go with him to work in service of the kingdom. However, it's not like a lot of these witches, like, they don't really get to communicate with their families after this. So some people are a bit hesitant about it or nervous, feeling like they don't really know what happens to their family members when they're taken away. And Raina actually had her sister be taken by the Witchwalker previously, so she absolutely hates him because she feels like it was terrible to take her sister away. She doesn't know what's happening to these girls, and she sets out to kill him when he comes to her village. However, that plan is thwarted when a different outside source attacks her village while he's there, and they kind of have to become reluctant allies and team up. So that's what happens in the first book. This is obviously continuing that. We do get like a more introduced to Raina's sister in this book, and that was what I liked about it. So unfortunately, in this book, I wasn't feeling very excited about Raina and Alexis, the previous main couple. I wasn't feeling that excited about their relationship and was a little bit bored for the most of this book, to be honest. But I really love Raina's sister. I think she's just like so fun. She has like a firecracker personality. She's very sassy, and she has kind of like potentially a blossoming romance. Potentially, I don't really know. Nothing really has happened yet, but I think that something could happen in the next book, and I was really enjoying those kind of like bits and pieces we were getting. And the ending of this book was actually so crazy and so unexpected to me that I had to like bump up the rating. That was pretty much like what brought me from like a 3 star to a 3 3/4 is the crazy ending and Raina's sister. So I'm definitely excited to read the next one, and I think that this could continue to be a fun series for me. Then at 4 stars, we have To Bleed a Crystal Bloom by Sarah A. Parker. This is a fantasy series that I haven't heard a ton about. I've heard like 1 or 2 people maybe talk about it here on YouTube, and I know that this author has a newer book out that's a little bit more popular. I think When the Dragon Hatched, I think it's called something like that. But I have been interested in To Bleed a Crystal Bloom because I heard someone talking about a specific scene where a main character was in heat, and I was very intrigued to know what they meant by that or like see how that played out. And I also heard that like the potential male interest is pretty controlling, and that's more of like a dark romance fantasy. So I did end up reading it, and I enjoyed it quite a lot. I think it's a really interesting setup. We were really kept in the dark for a lot of the book. Like, it's one of those where you really don't quite know what's going on, and you get bits and pieces and you can't quite interpret what the backstory is, which can be frustrating but can also be kind of fun. The main character, she is basically kept locked up in a tower by this man who found her as a child and rescued her from an attack from monsters. And so he keeps her basically in this tower to keep her safe. She also gives him a drop of her blood every day in water for him to drink. It's kind of this weird transaction that she never actually sees him doing it, and we don't know why this is happening. It's pretty bizarre. There's some other side characters that she is friends with at this kind of estate, and I really like the main character. Again, I don't remember her name, unfortunately, but she had like a rich inner world of lots of different stuff she liked to do and to kind of like skirt that authority that he had over her. And then it went in quite an unexpected direction, and I feel like it could be a really fun series. And I really liked that it was a darker romance for the fantasy. I always think that that is a fun time. So I would recommend that for sure if you like fantasy and also like dark romance. I think it's one try. Okay, we made it. It is time for my 4 5-stars of the month. I'm so excited to talk about these. So my first 5-star of the month was The Right Move by Liz Tomforde. And this is the second book in an interconnected sports romance series. Now, I am not a contemporary romance girly. Like, I tried to be, I honestly just can't do it. I really need like either like the threat of dark romance, like something more like really sinister going on, or like in fantasy where there's so many other plots going on. I need that. I can't just have just the romance. It's like something I really struggle with. So I had actually never read a sports romance before, and I know people love them so much, and I've heard so many great things specifically about this series and specifically about this book. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try to be a sports romance girly. And let me tell you, The Right Move was the perfect one to start with because it was phenomenal. It's basically about, we're following this girl named Indy who is a flight attendant for a Chicago hockey team, and her best friend is sisters with Ryan Shea, who is basically like the big hotshot basketball player on the Chicago Devils, and he is like one of the most well-known basketball players in the country. He's super famous, like obviously very attractive, very athletic, but he's super guarded and closed off. He does not like let women or anyone into his life beyond his sister. And Indy, basically in the beginning of the book, is dumped by her fiance. She has this really traumatic breakup with a really shitty guy and has nowhere to live. And Ryan's sister convinces Ryan to let Indy rent one of his rooms for really cheap in his like penthouse apartment situation. So she goes and becomes his roommate, and from there it's just like a lot of tension. There's also a fake dating plot that comes in. And all of this, like, just, it kind of sounds like tropey and something that I wouldn't usually like, but Liz Tomforde wrote these characters so well that I genuinely cared about them so much, and like it actually made me care about the sports as well. I adored Indy. She is like so bright and bubbly. She says like in the beginning, like, I am like other girls, like I love pink, like I love just every basic thing. I'm a romance reader, like, and I loved that her character was just embracing that. And like I said before, Ryan is so like closed off and guarded, but he's also so sweet once you get to know him. And I was just obsessed with the two of them together. Like, genuinely one of the best romance books I've ever read. Definitely the best contemporary romance book I've ever read. So my next 5-star read was The Witch's Heart by Geneviev Gornichec. And this is a Norse mythology retelling. It is a romance, sort of, or there is a romance. We're following our main character. Her name is Angerboda. She is basically this like ancestral witch who used to exist like in the gods realm. She's like killed and cast out, but she is reborn like in a different realm, kind of. It's not Earth, but it's like a different realm that's within Norse mythology. And she basically really keeps to herself and just like has this small meager living in a cave in this like kind of forgotten land. But she ends up meeting Loki, the god of mischief, and they end up forming a relationship. And it's kind of this long story of their relationship, Angerboda like getting to know who she is and remembering her past. And I would say that this is definitely reminiscent of Madeline Miller's writing, or even Jennifer Saint. So like Madeline Miller, she wrote Circe. I love Circe. I think Jennifer Saint, I think, is the author of, I can't even think about what that book is called anymore. I will pop it in if I think of it to let you know what I'm talking about. But we're really focusing on like the story, the mythology. It is really a tale about Angerboda, specifically about this woman and her like changing through her life, how she deals with magic, how she deals with these relationships, how she's basically been pitted against the gods, and how she continues to end up in the middle of their different issues, even though she wants nothing to do with them. And I guess her slowly coming to accept that and seeing what she does as a result. And really it's like a tale about womanhood, I would say. We see her get hurt countless times, but her continue to pick herself up and continue, because that's just what she has to do. And I really found it so touching and inspiring, and I really enjoyed all of the aspects of the Norse mythology as well. So I thought this is Definitely worth a read if you are interested in Norse mythology. Then I read Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zeng by Kylie Lee Baker. This is my Evernight special edition with the opposite dust jacket. I'm obsessed with it, with this like cleaning bottle. I read this in my last vlog, so if you want to hear my full thoughts, please check that out. But essentially, I love this. We're following Cora Zeng, who is a crime scene cleaner during the pandemic. Her sister's killed in a hate crime because she's Chinese American, and this man basically yells "Bat Eater" at her and then pushes her in front of an oncoming subway train, and Cora is forced to witness this. And so she's then dealing with the death of her sister, also seeing increasing deaths of Asian American women in her work in crime scene cleaning. And then it's also Hungry Ghost Month, and she's starting to see things and thinks that maybe she's seeing ghosts. And this is really a tale about so many different things, but really it's like this is horror with commentary. Like there's definitely scary aspects and gruesome aspects, but there's such good commentary in this book. We're talking about racism, we're talking about like what it means to be biracial and to be kind of trapped between two different cultures. So there's a lot of different topics that are touched on in this book, and I think it's honestly just a phenomenal horror book. This is, I think, my favorite new release of 2025 that I've read so far. And last but not least, we have Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bazterrica. This, once again, is a horror book. This one is pretty dark, pretty gruesome. This is, I would say, one of the more disturbing books I've read, so please know that before picking this up. We are following a future in which all of the animals on Earth have this disease that kills humans. All animals basically become eradicated. People no longer eat meat, but of course people aren't able to accept that, so they start eating human meat. And there's this whole weird like social setup around it about being politically correct and like tiptoeing around what they're doing. So people call it special meat instead of human meat. There's all these special factories and processes by which they do this. They like breed humans specifically for this purpose. It's very dark. We're following Marcos, who works at one of these special meat processing facilities, and he is going through a lot in his personal life. He has just lost a child. His wife is been like living at her mother's house, and so he's basically been separated for a little while, and he is continually pushed into traumatic situations for his job when he has to go to these different like breeding facilities or other places, butcher shops, where he's selling the meat. And he gradually begins to question what he's doing, and some wild and crazy stuff happens in this book. This is truly a wild one, and proceed with caution. But if you're okay with body horror and can read about cannibalism, I would give this a go. This is a really impactful book. Alright, those were the 8 books that I read in the month of May. Thank you all so much for watching. Please let me know down below if you have read any of these. I would love to hear your opinion as well. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye!